Hello and welcome to the Pro Tour Kobe semifinals. I'm Randy Buehler. I'm here with Brian Kibler, and we've got two very interesting storylines ready to clash here in our first match. Alexandre Peset of France had never played on the Pro Tour until this weekend. He played in 50 Pro Tour qualifiers over the course of his Magic career. He made the top 8 25 times. He made day 2 of 3 different Grand Prix. He even got a top 8 at French Nationals, but he lost in the quarterfinals there. He's never qualified for the Pro Tour, but finally he makes his Pro Tour debut this weekend. Here he is sitting in the semifinals. He's got at least 16 Pro Tour points, qualified for the next Pro Tour, going to get 2 points, going to get another invitation off of rating. He's on the gravy train.
He certainly fought his way through the trenches and made the best of it when he made it here.
If he wins this match, he'll be in first place in the Rookie of the Year.
Understandably so.
His opponent, the hometown hero, Masashiro Kuroda, very well-respected Japanese player. Most of his high finishes have come as a member of Team Rochester teams. PS2 won the Venice Masters, but here he sits in the semifinals, trying to finally be the first person from Japan to win a Pro Tour, and what better place to do it than Kobe, Japan.
He has an interesting story as well. This Pro Tour was the, I believe, 4th or 5th time he's gone 8-0 on the first day, of a premier level event. He did it 2 other times, I believe, at Grand Prix and once at Japan Nationals, and all 3 of those other times he crashed and burned on day 2 and failed to make the top 8.
He almost
missed it yesterday. He was 3-4 and needed to win his last round to be able to squeeze into the top 8.
He was actually 2-4 because he won the last 2.
He was 2-4 at some point. He started. He was 8-0, then was suddenly 10-4 and needed to win his last 2, and he managed to pull it out this time. And then he faced Rafael Lemoro in the first round of the top 8, and he dispatched him handily, 3-0.
3-0. Yeah, Kuroda seemed to have a really good understanding of the mono-red mirror match, and that should serve him well here because he's got the mirror again. It's Big Red versus Big Red.
Absolutely. He has slightly worse matchup here, I believe, than he had against Lemoro. Where Lemoro's deck was packed full of tons of artifact destruction, Peset actually has Pulse of the Forges of his own, as well as Shunt in his sideboard, which in the quarterfinals was absolutely devastating against Stefano Fiore.
Yeah, in game 4, Fiore went for the kill with a massive fireball, and Peset had the shunt to turn it around and win game 4 just to force game 5. Then in game 5, there was actually a situation where Stefano Fiore could have split a fireball. He could have given it 2 targets, pointed part of the fireball at Peset's head and the other half at an arc-slogger. That would have made shunt impossible, but he didn't see the play. He pointed the entire fireball at Peset. Peset had the shunt again through to the semifinals, onto the Pro Tour gravy train. Welcome to Sunday.
Yeah, he must be quite happy he put those shunts in his sideboard.
He was ecstatic. I was talking to him after lunch. He was like, how much money is it for 4th place? Yeah, $13,000. And how many pro points? How many pro points? I told him it was 16. He was like, 16? I'm on the train! He was really, really happy to be here. It was kind of cool. Got to feel good for the guy.
Absolutely. 25
Pro Tour qualifier top 8.
That's amazing. I mean, I would imagine that you just get so discouraged after playing 60 qualifiers or whatever it was.
It was 50. So I heard 50 and I heard 59. Yeah. I saw 59 once too. So.
That's just unreal.
Yep. Meanwhile, they've gotten off to pretty similar starts here. Both players have a Solemn Simulacrum. Both players have been building up their land and not really doing a whole lot else so far. That's kind of the way Mono Red goes in the early game. Mono Red really the deck of the weekend, I think.
It was the most popular deck in the top 8. And
5 out of the 8 players.
5 out of the 8 players are playing Mono Red.
And
two Affinity decks and one Cloud Post deck that Gabriel Nassif is still fighting with in the semifinals.
When the field was 45% Affinity, and the second most popular deck was actually Red-Green. Mono Red was 3rd, but it only had maybe 12% of the field, 14, somewhere in there.
And makes up over half of the top 8.
Yeah, very impressive results. And the Furnace Dragons, I think, is the sort of signature card. I mean, Arc-Sloggers and Fireballs are doing more of the work, but the Furnace Dragon's just cool. You got to make the Dragon the iconic card, right?
Yeah, I'm not one to argue with that. Although I think given everyone calling the deck Big Red over the weekend. I think the nickname of Clifford would be nice for the Furnace Dragon.
Clifford?
Clifford the Big Red Dog. The Big Red Dragon, as it were. Comes and eats everything.
All right, and the ends his trade. Both players draw a card. Over in the other semifinal match, it's Jelger Wiegersma versus Gabriel Nassif, and we will be bringing you more coverage of that later on in the day. Jelger Wiegersma has actually taken a very fast game one, so
As the affinity deck is wont
obviously
to do.
got the busted draw. Yeah, if it's a 5-minute game, pretty sure Jelger's the one chalking it up in the W column.
Seems likely.
So how different are these decks?
They're actually much more similar than the matchup we saw in the
Yeah,
quarterfinals.
there's Seething Song, by the way, from Peset. That's the Dragon time? Dragon! Seething Song's out the Furnace Dragon. 5/5 flyer. Destroys 2 of his own lands,
But
he's got a dragon. Wow, that is a gutsy play. He uses up Seething Song and loses 2 mountains, all to get a 5/5 flyer.
Fireball?
Does Kuroda have the answer? He's got the 6th land, so that brings Fireball into play. He's got to blast it out of the sky, right?
If he has Fireball, he has to Fireball.
Shrapnel Blast also kills it.
But he has no artifacts right
He
now.
has, good point.
He could play Yens and Shrapnel Blast, but
Electrostatic Bolt.
Bolt and
Barbed Lightning?
Barbed Lightning with Entwine. Yep.
Oh, down goes the dragon.
Clifford's dead. See, Peset's deck is actually very interesting in that he plays 4 main deck copies of Seething Song.
Right.
Against the Affinity decks, his deck does nothing but cast Furnace Dragon as fast as possible.
Makes
which
sense.
is a perfectly reasonable
No,
play.
that seems like a fine plan. Do you like that play? Seething Song out the dragon, go for it?
It depends on the rest of his hand. If the rest of his hand are things like Shatters and Bolts, I mean, that's absolutely his play.
Okay. Yeah, it seems reasonable. I don't know what else he's going to do. I mean, he could wait, but he's still going to lose the
Yeah,
lands.
I mean,
I think you go for it there.
absolutely.
Doesn't even... I think Kuroda, other than... he either needs 6 land or an artifact in order to kill it, so... And he only had 5.
Well, I
the play
mean,
makes sense.
he could just Bolt Barbed Lightning without Entwine.
That's 4 mana.
He could
Yeah,
kill it
fair
with
enough.
4.
Fair enough.
But I mean, it's like Peset's deck is packed with a lot of cards that don't really have that much impact on the games.
Arc-slogger just
Flame
came
Breaks
down
and
from
such
Masashiro
as well.
Kuroda, by the way.
Arc-slogger
Another
is a
giant
large
creature.
fellow. He's been the creature of the tournament other than Furnace Dragon, I think.
Yeah, the Arc-slogger's done more of the dirty work. I think he's actually probably had a bigger impact on more games. Furnace Dragon's just cooler.
Well, I mean, depends what games you're talking about. If you're talking about games against Affinity decks, Furnace Dragon certainly had more of an impact in those. Furnace Dragon comes down, and most of the time the game's over.
That's a good point. Maybe he's been more relevant to more games. He had some relevance to more games.
Perhaps.
Furnace Dragon is like, dragon or no. You know,
Yeah.
you win or I win. I was actually talking, I had dinner with Bill Rose last night, the vice president of R&D back at Wizards of the Coast, who was on the design team for Darksteel, and he's the guy that designed Furnace Dragon. He'd forgotten because the set was called Lettuce at the time and the names all changed. He's like, oh yeah, I made that card, didn't I? I had to fight for that. Those guys didn't want. They were like, an affinity card that destroys your artifacts. Who would want to play that? I had to fight them.
Who
Like,
indeed?
it's cool. It's top down. You know, he hit the dragon. He hoards the treasure. I'm pretty glad Bill won that fight.
This
definitely a
Pro
cool
Tour
card.
would look a lot different
It would.
if it weren't for Furnace Dragon.
Dragons hoarding all the artifacts. Hoarding the treasure. Flame Break from Peset. And finishes
Flame
it
Break
off
Bolt.
with Electrostatic Bolt. And it deals 3 damage to both players, so we're going to be at 13-10.
If Arc-slogger doesn't take a shot at the noggin,
Yep.
seems likely that he
And
will.
there is indeed the Electrostatic Bolt, so
I'm gonna
Kuroda
guess
has the option to lose 10 cards for 2 damage.
seems like a good option to take.
How many cards?
Oh, that
Oh, Pulse of the Forge actually makes this a lot more complicated. Currently, the life total difference is 3. If he takes a shot with Arc-slogger, all of a sudden, Pulse of the Peset can buy back a Pulse of the Forge.
Peset's pulses.
Masashiro Kuroda was the one player who was playtesting over lunch, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I found all 4 players sort of... It was interesting, like, Peset was looking at the standings and looking into the Pro Tour points and just, you know, figuring out what he'd accomplished with that quarterfinal win. Gabriel Nassif and Jager Viegersma were just kind of hanging out with their buddies, right? They're the two veterans. They've been here. They've done that. You know, they were watching a side draft and sort of critiquing their friends and having fun. Masashiro Kuroda and a crowd of Japanese players were sitting out by the KFC playtesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Osamu Fujita had put together a version of the deck. No, Kuroda does go for the arc-slogger, so he wants the 2 damage. He's willing to open up a possible pulse with the buyback.
Well, he is getting the first untap here.
That's all.
And it does put his opponent at 8, and if he has pulse or anything, he is in very good shape.
But in any case, yeah, I think Kuroda is the only person who specifically practiced the semifinal matchup.
That's interesting.
No, I found it very interesting. It was like all the good Japanese players sort of gathered. Not all of them, but I mean his crowd of them. Yeah. Sagoshi Fujita is the one who designed this deck. Sagoshi Fujita, actually the first Japanese player to get to a top 8. He did that back at Pro Tour Tokyo.
So long ago now.
Yeah. So Sagoshi Fujita designed this. Osamu Fujita played it to some success. I know he was 7-1 on day 1. I don't remember where he finished up, though. And then Masashiro Kuroda piloting their deck here in the finals. Yeah, they were flying through. They must have got in, 10, 20 games. They were just flying through the games. All right.
8.
Peset is at 8.
4 to you.
Fireball for 4. Dome shot.
13, Fuzi, 4. No.
Drops Peset to 4. Shouldn't he call Uno at this point? It's like, I believe Peset needs to win this game this turn.
I don't think there's cards in his deck that can do
No,
that.
from 13, it seems awfully hard.
Especially since there's even a mana up. He's like, I don't need the extra 1.
Yeah.
He's putting you to 4.
Right.
Don't want you to 3.
That's a good pulse number, right? It's a good pulse number, 4.
I suppose so.
I get complicated. I know that card just can deal crazy amounts of damage, but it's all complicated. And crowd watches on, gathered around the catwalk. Masashiro Kuroda stares over. And there's the fireball. Masashiro Kuroda. Another dome shot for 4, and the Japanese player takes a 1-0 lead here in Japan. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more coverage of the Pro Tour Kobe semifinals. We're back. Gabriel Nassif is through to the finals, and he'll be taking on either Masashiro Kuroda, who you see on the left of your screen, or Alexandre Peset on the right of your screen. They're mired deep in a long game 2. We saw Kuroda win game number 1, then we went and watched the rest of the match, and this is still game 2. It's 16-12. Kuroda's managed to deal a little more damage so far, but there's not a whole lot going on. There's one Solemn Simulacrum in play on Kuroda's side, attacking, and then just a bunch of land from both players. So it could be that Kuroda is fully aware of the shunts that are in Peset's sideboard in for the match. It makes it a lot harder to just go for the dome shots and burn somebody out. Meanwhile, sitting in the commentary booth with me and Brian Kibler is Tom Gavin. So you may hear Tom chip in with a comment here and there.
This is the area of the game where when both decks have Pulse of the Forge, things get really complicated.
Yeah, Peset just deliberately tapped his Talisman for damage so that he could play Pulse of the Forge and buy it back. So Talisman sends him to 11, and now the Pulse will drop Kuroda to 12, and Pulse will come back to his hand. Things get complicated here.
That's the card that we were initially attracted to with the red deck. It's
Yeah.
just, you could just be getting your face smashed, and again, I'm very good at that, but you could just be getting crushed, and all of a sudden you go, pulse you, untap, pulse you, and then you're just like, what the heck happened? I mean,
Yeah.
I was up there listening to the commentary, and then you guys were just like, these guys are burning each other out, they're fireballing each other out, oh my god, they're great players! They're fireballing each other, traveling, blasting each other out. I'm just like, well, but Pulse is the strategy card.
Yeah.
Pulse is the thinking card, and that's the card I like in the deck. I mean, I was disappointed to see Fireball come back. I was like, just a boring X spell. I'm just going to get X'd out. I'll X you out. I'll Fireball you right out of this tournament, you know. But the Pulse is an interesting card, and I got to give Peset credit for four copies in his main deck.
Peset actually only has 3. Kuroda has 4.
Well, then he's got to tighten up next time. He's got to get with the picture here.
I think, I mean, it is a card that really adds an interesting strategic element to the mid game of, games that would otherwise just be throw a fireball at your face, throw a fireball at your face. I mean, particularly in this matchup where, both players have pulses and Peset also has shunts. And that really makes things complicated in terms of how Kuroda has to play.
Oh, yeah.
Seething Song is just unbelievable. I mean, I watched Kuroda clinch the quarters, and he Seething Songed out arc-slogger on turn 3.
Kuroda doesn't have Seething Song.
Peset has
Sorry, that's what I meant I saw Peset Seething Song arc-slogger on turn 3, and it was just over.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible.
Sounds pretty
Seething
good.
Song on arc-slogger turn 3 is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, they're usually for the
actually.
dragons, but we're not playing against Affinity. Turn 3 arc-slogger seems pretty good.
That is pretty spicy. And you can make gigantic fireballs and things.
Sure.
I mean, how do you deal with that? I guess you got to shrapnel blast it, or you just got to scoop them.
It's interesting that we talked about Mono Red had such a good weekend, and it was the Furnace Dragons, I think, that got the Mono Red decks to the top of the Swiss. But which Mono Red decks got through to the semifinals? It's the Pulse versions.
Yep.
Not everybody had Pulse of the Forge, but those are the versions that seem to have gotten through.
I'm so impressed by the Japanese players, though. I mean, when I think about when I came here in 1999, which is the last time I came here, and I saw the Japanese players and the technology, and I'll be honest with you, it was far behind. Now these guys are at the top, or they're the industry leaders. These guys are the technology leaders. I was over talking to Kuroda, who actually speaks very, very good English.
Yeah, he does.
And I was over talking to him and his wife and some of the Japanese players, and I was trying to sign him up to my new team. I'll be honest with you. We tried to outsource to the Dutch. We're going to Japan. We're going. I'm telling you, no more trade secrets. These guys are so creative, and you need such a creative element in this day and age in order to separate yourself. There's so little separation in Magic right now. I mean, there's so many top players, and there's so many people gunning it out and cutthroat. And these guys, the creativity they can bring and the understanding they can bring is just amazing. I mean, just the language barrier is tough, and just, there's a lot of loyalty.
I mean, one thing that definitely kept Japan behind for a long time was the fact that so much of Magic strategy was primarily in the English language.
Yeah, it's true.
And it took the Japanese Magic community a long time to catch up because they were separated in that way. But I mean, once Japan started producing top players of its own, I mean, the Japanese results, as we've seen over the past year or so, have just exploded. I mean, this tournament, Kuroda in the top 8, 9th and 10th, both Japanese players, and we were saying that something like the last 10 pro. I don't remember how many Pro Tours.
Yeah, they've had about 2 seasons of somebody in the top 8 of every individual event. They've had back-to-back Rookies of the Year, and they're leading the Rookie of the Year race this year. Shiki, the guy in 9th place.
He bashed me.
Yeah, he is currently in first place, although Alexandre Peset could pass him depending on how he does for the rest of today.
Well, I heard you guys mentioning earlier, how many qualifiers Peset has played. 60 qualifiers is nothing in the Boston area. I know people who literally, I know people who played hundreds of qualifiers in the New England area, and
without ever qualifying.
Yeah, and basically maybe never even making top 8, at times. And I mean, there's some pretty dire straits in terms of, qualifiers are a grind. Trust me, that is not the way you want to try to get onto the Pro Tour. It's so difficult, and the people trying to qualify over and again. I mean, just imagine trying to win a 128-person tournament without any room for error.
They're fun tournaments. It's a good time.
It's fun. I mean, I highly recommend them. I mean, it's an awesome challenge. There's nothing exhilarating, I think, as winning your first qualifier, or even if you've been on the Pro Tour a bunch of times and then you win another qualifier. But it's difficult. It's difficult.
No, it's hard, but it's a fun day, and it's a nice challenge is the way I like to look at it. Meanwhile, these players are playing an interesting little game of chicken. We know that Peset has Pulse of the Forge in his hand, and it's sort of 12-11, but they're just like tentatively lay a land and go.
I mean,
between the pulses and the shunts, and it's just like, when do you make your move? When do you actually go for it?
That's one of the things that makes this matchup so complicated at this point.
Well, what does Kuroda have? Like, we've talked about Peset's shunts. He's the only one with shunts, right?
Yes, he's the only one with shunts. Kuroda has, he has just more burn spells. I mean, he has Shrapnel Blast and Barbed Lightnings and Fireballs and Detonates. He has Molten Rains as well, which really don't do anything at this point in the game.
But I mean, basically, I think Kuroda's plan right now is just to dink and dunk him to death. I mean, he's just going to hit him for as little as he can. Most of Peset's spells are going to be just the big game enders and just boom, try to get you. But I mean, Shunt is a really hard card to play, right? I mean, I watched a couple people, just trying to, it's a bluffer's card to me. It's a great card to bluff, and then it's a great card to try to not bluff and try to get someone to play into.
I mean, I think the combination of Pulse of the Forge and Shunt is just absolutely devastating. I mean, against Pulse of the Forge, generally your strategy has to be to kill them with one big game-ending effect, so they can't continue to abuse their pulse and slowly kill you as you whittle them down with Simulacrum. I mean, if he just tries to whittle them down with Simulacrum, I mean, Peset can theoretically just go, all right, I will pulse you, then fireball you to death. And knowing that Kuroda has no shunts, that's not a dangerous road to victory for him.
Right. So much mana. Peset has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He has 9 mana right now. So as soon as he draws a fireball, he wins. Is that basically what's going on?
It looks that way.
But
as soon as he has fireball, he wins.
Does Pulse...
I mean, he actually could just win on his next turn. He could pulse him and fireball.
Pulse on tap fireball. Can he get... Well, he has to tap out for the fireball, though, and that brings Shunt out of play. Like, Kuroda could have lethal
he could have triple
pulses
pulse or,
and shrapnel blasts and stuff in his hand, just waiting for Peset to tap out.
It's a really, really strange game of chicken.
No, yeah, I think that's exactly like... Peset might have the kill in hand, but he doesn't want to tap out because he's either has a Shunt or is bluffing a Shunt. Kuroda clearly respects the Shunt and is playing around it, I think.
I mean, in terms of this format, there are so many timing rules. I think by far this is probably the hardest format that I've played in a long time. I had a friend of mine back east who was helping us test, and then he was like, "I love this format." And then I asked him why. He's like, "Well, because Bob Maher can't show up and get a deck and then win, because it's going to require so much testing and practice to actually do well in this format." I kind of got a chuckle out of it, but I mean, he's right. I mean, he's underscoring the point that there are so many timing rules. Like I couldn't underscore how many times that I'm going to try to kill you, and they'll just kill you in response with your own disciple in like a affinity mirror matchup where both players have a disciple. I mean, the timing is incredible.
I actually had to Zach Parker, one of the players, a young player from Atlanta who I did a lot of playtesting with for this tournament with. I actually had to teach him the disciple stack tricks like a week ago. I was like, yeah, during your upkeep, kill you, and he was like, what? You both have disciples? I'm like, no, you're dead, actually.
Yeah. So why don't you explain what you're talking about?
Because of the way that the stack works, whenever a triggered ability goes in the stack, if two players have triggered abilities that both go in the stack, the active players go in the stack first. So say two players have disciple vaults, or say one player even has 2, but he's the active player. The other player can use an ability like Atog or Arcbound Ravager, sacrifice an artifact during their opponent's turn, and their opponent's abilities go in the stack, then their opponent's disciples go in the stack, their own goes in the stack. They allow theirs to resolve, and before their opponents get to resolve, they add another use of the Ravager to the stack, which would put two more of their opponent's activations, but one of theirs. So that you can kill your opponent even if you're at lower life, as long as it's their turn and you're the one who has control of the sacrifice effects.
Interesting.
I mean, even the Mind Slaver, just playing that card is so difficult.
Yeah, that's another interesting card in the 12-post deck is Mind Slaver, which can be absolutely devastating against the red decks. Like Mind Slaver, your hand's 3 fireballs. Well, you're gonna fireball yourself for 0, fireball yourself for 0, then fireball yourself for 10.
Yeah.
Yesterday I watched Nassif absolutely ruin Hans Hohen with the Mind Slaver. Basically, Hans Hohen had about 7 permanents into play, Atog, a handful of cards, and after a bunch of things weren't printed on Chrome Mox, a bunch of things killed with Pyrite Spellbomb, and then everything sacked to the Atog, he had an Atog left afterwards. So,
in an Atog Ravager format, and Mind Slaver seems like if you can survive long enough to use it, it's got to be pretty good.
And it's absolutely out of this world against this mono red deck. Fireball yourself, thank you.
Detonate your own artifact land. Detonate your own artifact land. Pulse yourself.
I'm just curious how Kuroda is, what his plan is. I mean, I guess it's just going to be to try to hit him for a couple here and there. I mean, certainly.
Yeah, if he can win with Bard Lightnings and things, then maybe he can get around Shunt.
I mean, it seems like what he has to do
start burning
is,
end step and.
I don't even. I was just trying to fathom how this could go. It's pretty difficult. I mean, it seems like Peset has to be at a natural advantage because he does have Shunt in his deck.
Yeah.
But somehow in the standoff, Peset has to be the one who's at the advantage.
Well, I mean, we can always go get V again. I'm sure he can figure this one out.
We can at least have an opinion.
That much is definitely true.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other interesting things about this format is how different affinity decks or just even different decks can be within one class of categories. For example, on our team we had 7 different affinity lists, and versus CMU Target they really all standardize on their one list. And I guess it's kind of two sides of the same coin. You don't really want a lot of conflict and controversy in your team. You kind of want a single list, But then again, if you just have a single list, then the absence of conflict is apathy. I mean, maybe the list isn't as good as it could be. But
Well, man, I don't think that necessarily the fact that they all played the same list means they didn't have a lot of lists in testing. I mean, I know my small testing group, had
Talisman plus mana burn down to 7, by the way.
I think he's going for he's going for something.
12 to 7 now. Peset deliberately moved his own life total 5
he
points
did it during
below
his end,
Kuroda's.
he did it during his end step rather than his second main phase.
Yeah, that's
which
surprises
prevented
me a
him
little bit.
prevented him from being able to actually pulse on his turn, which seems strange.
Right, aren't you supposed to mana burn during their main phase so that you can then buy back a pulse during their end step?
yeah,
But then hold on, Kuroda could then back him up. I'm going to back you up, and then I'm going to fireball you out of this tournament.
Well, but you have mana floating for the shunt that's in your
That's a
hand,
good
right?
point.
You can't get backed up after you mana burn. You either have
That's
the mana
right.
floating.
That's right.
There's the pulse.
Uh-oh.
Pulse for 4. Confidently.
I have a feeling it's going to be lethal damage on the stack. I don't know what's going to resolve,
Right.
but it's going
I
to be on
agree.
the stack.
Yeah.
Lethal
So-
damage is on the stack. This Peset would be in much better shape though if he pulsed during Kuroda's end step, right?
Seems
Like
that way.
just having 3 more mana here
Yeah.
would give him the shunt mana. All right, but looks like he might be going for it. So main phase, pulse you. Kuroda says okay, so Kuroda's at 8 now. Tricky, tricky.
He's just letting him.
He can blow the pulse to get Kuroda to 4, and then he'll have, is it 4 mana left?
Well, I mean, he could also take 2 pings from the talisman, potentially burn during his combat step, and then second main phase, pulse again. But that's certainly a lot more risky.
Yeah.
Now you open yourself up to shrapnel blast.
Yeah.
I don't know how much mana he's got.
Yeah, I don't understand his
Why is
player
Jens
here.
not attacking, by the way? What am I missing?
Because he didn't want to. I guess he just didn't want to open himself up to, an easier road to get pulsed out. If Jens had attacked, he wouldn't have had the mana burn, so he could have just
That's
tapped his
funny.
talismans, I guess.
So Jens was not attacking because of the pulse math.
What a
Tricky
card!
game.
It's really strange.
Tricky game.
I really like the way that Pulse the Forge. Ooh, is it Seething Song?
Oh, Seething
wow.
Song!
Wow.
That's where the mana comes from.
Uh-oh. Wait, did he take pings though off those talismans? Is the question? No.
No.
He's probably,
3 cards left.
Can he fireball?
He can
with
fireball.
A shunt? No.
No, you can't fireball him for 8 and still shunt.
He's going to have
But, I mean,
5
he can
and
go-
then 6, 7, 8, 9. He has access to 9 mana by my count.
He could have actually if he had burned second main phase, pulsed the end of turn, he could actually fireball and have shunt mana open.
Maybe he doesn't have fireball. Maybe he just has 2
He just
pulses.
pulse, and he's going
Pulse,
for it.
pulse, shunt. Pulse,
He
pulse,
can't-
shunt
he
does
can't
it.
Pulse, shunt.
Yeah,
can
that's
he?
4,
9
9.
mana.
It's 5,
Pulse,
6,
pulse, shunt,
7,
baby.
8, 9.
Free,
Oh yeah,
free,
that
free.
is.
Uh-oh.
Pulse to you
Uh-oh.
is 2 floating from the Seething Song. Kuroda not looking real happy.
Oh, no. Well, he could potentially add to the stack a couple shrapnel blasts or, a pulse, a shrapnel blast.
I mean, he would have to have blast, and pulse.
Yeah. It's at 8.
Peset clearly, all right, that pulse resolved. So Kuroda's at 4. 4 to 7. Does Peset have the last pulse? He's got 2 cards left. If it's pulse shunt, I think he's going to even this match at a game apiece.
So he's got 2 red floating.
Yep.
Yep.
And the pulse went to the graveyard.
Yep.
Well, we'll see. Well, certainly Europe has dominated yet another tournament. 6 players in the top 8. Italy, of all things. I was joking around with a couple of the judges this morning about, I'm like, why Italy all of a sudden? And then I said to myself, wait a second. Wasn't Jeff Dene replaced by this Italy guy? And then, coincidentally, after that was said, all 3 Italy people lost in the first round. So, I don't know. I mean, but it was certainly an interesting thought. But it's certainly interesting to see. It's
Peset
really
taps the land, and there is the pulse we were talking about.
lethal
Pulse of the
damage.
Forge, lethal damage on the stack, pointing at Masashiro Kuroda. He's tapping some mana. He's got to go for it here. He's got to hope there's no shunt and hope. Can he deal 7 at instant speed? There's Pulse.
Whoa. Actually, he's lower life. That comes back to his hand.
No, it
No, it's
doesn't.
4 to 7.
It
No,
would,
it doesn't.
that would put him down to
No, Kuroda's at lower life. That's why I'm saying that.
no. After that resolved,
Oh, that's
he would be at higher still.
Yeah.
So 3. And he scoops.
Oh, and he scoops. Alexandre Peset. Wow, look at him rock back in his chair.
Did he have the
He's
shunt?
exhausted. We don't know if he had the shunt. Was it the shunt?
Read
Let's
him,
see.
Read him for the shunt, Brian.
Oh,
Read
he's
him.
showing into the coverage. You can check out the sideboard coverage to find out what that card was.
Oh.
We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back for game number 3 of this matchup, so stay tuned.
It was a great furnace, he said in the background. That's what the other guy said.
Welcome back to the Pro Tour Kobe semifinals. It's game 3 now between Masashiro Kuroda and Alexandre Peset. 1 game apiece. Both players were bluffing extensively in game 2, but at the end, when Peset went for it, he did not have the shunt that he was representing, but he won anyway. It all worked out in the end. And now they're off in game 3.
It's interesting to think about what might have happened, what Kuroda could have had in his hand that he just
Yeah.
wasn't playing because he was afraid of shunt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that he could have just had the win.
Yeah,
He
I don't know.
could have just had.
He did
Pulse
not
you,
have it at
fireball
instant
you.
speed, or he would've
He
gone
did not
for it,
have it
but
at instant speed, but
He could easily have had a lethal fireball that he just chose not to go for. I suspect our sideboard coverage will know that. They get to see the hands. Can't show them on camera because we have a live crowd watching the feed, and we want to make sure no information gets from the crowd to the players. So that's why you don't get to see the hands. But our sideboard reporters get to see the hands.
boom, detonate.
Kuroda 20, Puzi
Sorry,
70.
our MagicTheGathering.com tournament
Yes.
center event coverage specialists.
There is no longer a sideboard.com. It is MagicTheGathering.com tournament center.
I'm actually pretty happy with the way the new website works out. It seems to be
Once
working.
once it got together, it's working very well. I think.
Sure.
I was, being an avid Magic historian, I was somewhat frustrated when it was difficult to get the links to the archives of the various tournament coverage and such. But now things seem to be getting
Yeah,
together.
people know how valuable that old coverage is, so all those archives are back up. Everything's on board, and hopefully we'll continue to get better. Meanwhile, a pair of talismans from Alexandre Peset.
One went boom.
One went boom, the second one's in play. No third land is the interesting news.
Go. You.
There's the third land for Peset.
Echoing ruin those great
And
furnaces. Echo.
Solemn Simulacrum. Kuroda slowed him down as long as he could. The talisman did put a hiccup in plans, but Solemn Simulacrum's coming out anyway. I believe Peset takes the lead in the Rookie of the Year race just by winning this match. You get 24 pro points if you
Yes,
finish second at
24
the
for
Pro
second
Tour.
place.
And Shiki had, I think, 11, and then he put up a 9th place
So he
for
has-
8
he
more
has
to 19.
19.
I believe he has 19. Maybe it's 20, but I'm pretty sure it's less than 24. But more than 16.
Does they have any Pro Tour points at all? Any from?
Peset?
Yeah.
Peset has 0.
He has not like a 1 point from a Grand Prix finish or something.
No.
Could detonate that yen.
Or at least certainly doesn't have any that he's aware of. Because when I talked to him, he was like, how many pro points is it for second? Or for third?
Well, he's not quite in the
16.
train yet then.
Well, but he's invited to the next one, so that's at least 2 to 18. And then he'll get, for the next constructed Pro Tour, he'll get invited on rating,
Oh,
having
yeah,
made
that's
top
true.
8 here. So
That's true.
one semifinal finish does get you on the gravy train, though there might be a hiccup while the one that you're qualified for on rating comes up.
Unless you.
He'll also have 18 points for the Team Pro Tour.
True.
That's probably enough points to find a team just to get there, to get the 2 points to get
true,
to 20.
True.
No, sorry.
It's a slower game than the ones we saw with Nassif and Yelger.
Yeah, I didn't realize the mono red on mono red would get this slow and complicated.
With Pulse, the math gets ugly, ugly.
So
Your head just starts hurting.
I thought making blue this bad would take all the thinking out of play. The game should go faster. It's mountains and forests and things.
Oh my.
Pro Tour Magic players proving they can think about anything.
I wonder how many basic swamps were in this tournament.
Basic swamps.
There probably were more than basic plains. Basic planes
No,
don't.
I think you run one basic planes in the Reap and Sow deck
Nope,
sometimes.
there's 0. Only I saw like some people
Some of
with
them
one
did.
of them.
Some of them had.
But I mean, there were certainly more basic swamps than basic plains in the tournament.
Okay.
Because there were some Death Cloud decks, and those need a
Blink.
lot of swamps.
Right. Blink Moth Nexus, pink silver.
Go.
Yeah, there were still like 10 people who ran Death Cloud decks. Those must have a lot of swamps in them. I don't know that anybody ran the White Weenie equipment deck. That was sort of the only base white deck, right?
Yeah. There were pristine Angel control decks.
I heard that deck was good.
I don't think you heard correctly.
All right. I heard Kai lose to it and say, I cannot beat that deck.
I mean, maybe his deck can't beat it.
It's
That
good. If
doesn't
it's
mean
good against mono red, it could be good in the format, though.
Maybe.
Like, especially once the qualifier season rolls around, if people think this mono red deck is the deck to play, then
Well, I bet Nassif's deck will get quite a bit of play.
that's fair. I think Nassif's deck is already getting quite a bit of play at Friday Night Magic.
I wouldn't be surprised. Cloud Post is a pretty popular card in Standard already, so.
All right. Well, Peset sends Solemn Simulacrum over and drops an arc-slogger.
Arc-slogger.
Good start for the Frenchman. We
Not
could have the
bad.
all-French finals.
It could be.
Have they won a Pro Tour yet, or is it Nassif was second in his last run at it, right?
I'm trying to figure. I know Mark, was figuring this trivia out all the time. We usually have Mark Rosewater with us here in the commentary booth, and he's currently back in the States caring for his not long ago born twins.
Yes. Congratulations, Mark.
But he usually feeds us an endless stream of various tidbits of trivia, and we don't have quite our facts book with us without Mark. I know a lot of the Magic history, but Mark spews it forth like he's an encyclopedia.
Not a whole lot going on for Kuroda so far.
No, he's got some land.
He's played 5 lands, and 2 of them can fly over for damage.
Only one of them produces red, which is pretty significant. He can't bolt and lightning the slogger, for instance. Slogger's huge in this matchup, and especially playing Slogger quickly.
Seething Song out the Arc-slogger. I did not think.
Yeah, I actually hadn't even.
There's Shrapnel Blast. Sacrifices a Darksteel Citadel to deal 5 to the Arc-slogger.
Seething Song out in Arc-slogger is hilarious.
I did not expect that to be what the weekend was going to come down to, but
18 to Z15.
Peset knew something we didn't, I think.
So it would seem.
It's like he got the mono red deck just better than anybody else. I mean, his version
His
might
version
just be the
does
best
seem-
version.
Well, he has no fireballs in the main deck, which seems quite strange.
Oh, there's another Arc-slogger.
I mean, wow.
No fireballs main.
No fireballs.
Oh,
main.
wow.
His fireballs are all on the sideboard.
Huh. That's interesting. Well, Kuroda finally came up with a second mountain. That might make it easier for him to kill a second Arc-slogger. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Peset's main
Yes,
deck, but
Barbed
between
Lightning
deck and sideboard
and
I
Electrostatic
like-
Bolt.
Yep. It's,
Dispatch Arc-slogger.
Go. American.
was the bolt entwined? No, it was not.
Nope.
He was.
1 mana
A
short
mana
because he
short.
just sacked the land to the Dark.
Yep.
He had to sack Darksteel Citadel to the previous Shrapnel Blast. So it's 16 to 15. Jens keeps pinking away. Jens comes over again. Now it's 14-15.
To Z15.
Those 2 Arc-sloggers have taken 4 cards away from Masashiro Kuroda. You get a Shrapnel Blast, a land, a Barbed Lightning, and an Electrostatic Bolt.
Arc-slogger is a large gentleman. A number of players actually also included Volshock Warboar in their sideboard for the
Really?
Mono Red Mirror. Absolutely.
Huh.
Which I mean, it's if it comes down early, I mean that thing's a monster.
It's not small.
I mean, the problem is that keeping artifacts in play isn't the easiest thing in the Red Mirror. But I mean, especially if Jens is your only artifact, you play it, they kill it in response. Well, your Warboar's dead too.
Peset plays a second Talisman. I guess his 3rd of the game.
Sure.
And a Pyrite Spellbomb. The one creature I was not expecting to see this weekend was in the mono green deck that Sanchez Mata had. Karstoderms.
I saw Karstoderms in many sideboards.
Yeah. He sideboarded it in. It was funny that the decks that allegedly didn't have artifacts would still have random artifact
Yeah.
lands and things.
Karstoderm would
Still
get
shrinking.
smaller. I mean, that was actually my team's sideboard plan against the red decks was actually bring an artifact kill. we brought in Shamans and Oxidizes to kill their artifact lands and talismans so they couldn't cast dragons. One of the strangest plays that I made all tournament was oxidizing Rickard Osterberg's Chromatic Sphere just so he couldn't cast Furnace Dragon the next turn. And it actually turned out that play won me the match.
Interesting. All right, spellbomb number 2 from Alexandre Peset.
Holding off those Nexuses. What do you call a group of Nexus? I mean, you have loci for cloud posts.
I thought it was loci.
Loci?
I don't know.
Loci? I really don't know. This is what our commentary is reduced to during the slow periods in the games. Sort of like the Krark clan grunt pronunciation argument we had in Amsterdam. I actually read the forums of the website that someone was making fun of us for making fun of the pronunciation or for arguing about the pronunciation because we have nothing better to say clearly, which sometimes is true. Like right now, I really can't think of much to say.
You could point out that you could stop talking long enough to let me point out that Masashiro Kuroda played a Solemn Simulacrum.
I could, but what fun with that? Who wants you to talk, Randy?
Oh.
I mean, let's be realistic here. People tune in to listen to me.
Do you pop that with a spell bomb? Clear a path for your own?
I mean, it's possible. I'm not sure. I mean, it certainly depends on what Peset has in his hand. The spell bombs, are potentially random card might be useful. I think if you're gonna pop it, yeah, there. No.
Oh,
Ooh,
2 to the
Storing
head.
Nugget. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. 2 to the head, 2 to the head.
Detonate now?
Kuroda's at 10. Oh, detonate would be a spicy one. 10 to 15. Kuroda's at 10. Peset has 6 mana, 7 mana. I don't think he can win this turn.
Blast.
Yeah, Shrapnel Blast would do it.
Detonate, attack you, blast.
Peset looking at the life totals. Fireball you.
Fireball for 6.
Spam.
And, I mean, this is where just knowing that your opponent doesn't have Shunt makes you feel so safe.
They always tapped out. He called him tapped out anyway. All right. So Alexandre Peset just unleashed a tirade of blast after blast. Spellbomb, Fireball you for 6. Kuroda's now at 4, and Peset certainly seems to be threatening to win as soon as he untaps.
I mean, I'm not saying this.
What can Kuroda do here? Peset's at 15.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any way that he can come back from this position.
No, if Peset has the last burn spell in hand that he's representing, it looks like he's going to take a 2-1 lead.
He's just sitting there staring at the card in his hand. He's like, look, this is a Pulse of the Forge. You are dead. Oh.
Check. Is it still a pulse? Yes, it's still a pulse.
Still a Pulse of the Forge
Wait,
in my hand. Still
let
got
me look
one.
down again. Yep, there it is.
Yep.
That is one happy rookie. And Masashiro Kuroda is... Japan may have to wait another event. We'll see.
Well, we still got at least one more game after this one.
It's true. Peset's deck is just so advantaged after sideboarding.
Yeah,
though.
game 1 he's at a huge disadvantage, but after sideboarding, those shunts are enormous.
The simulacrums smash into each other. Each player draws a card.
And also, Seething Song actually seems really, I think it's pretty good.
Having extra mana when you get in these pulse fights, especially if you're trying to use Shunt to defend your fireballs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and the threat of of Song Slogger is just pretty enormous.
Kuroda studies his options, but Kuroda, I don't know what he can do. He's got to just cross his fingers and say go and hope that Peset's bluffing, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what else he can do.
I hope that Peset doesn't have one of the 30 cards in his deck that kills him.
My turn?
My turn?
Like,
Asks Alexandre Peset. I have this card. Look at it. I have this
he's just
card.
holding it above the table. Look, you're dead. Look, you're dead.
Can I play this yet? Please. Kuroda knows it's over, I think.
Can I go? Come on. I want to pulse you.
Let me untap.
I want to do it. If Kuroda's slow rolling triple shrapnel blast here, that'd be kind of rude.
Oh, Molten Rain.
It's
Not enough to do anything.
74. Yeah.
Fireball for 4. That gets Peset to 11. 9 from the... Nope, there it is. Pulse of the Forge wins. Alexandre Peset, game 3. More burn and the shunts to back it up. 2-1 lead for the Frenchman. Gabriel Nassif sitting in the finals waiting for him. Will it be an all-France final?
We shall see.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. It's time for game 4 of the semifinal match. Masashiro Kuroda is down 2-1, but he does have a slight advantage in this game. He gets to go first, and his opponent has been forced to take a mulligan. So Alexandre Peset playing this game with just 6 cards in his opening draw. A couple of lands for both players, and it's now Kuroda's 3rd turn.
I want to see Seething Song arc-slogger. That's really what I want to see.
Oh, Kuroda does not play a land on his 3rd turn.
Seething
There's
Song.
3 mana.
Seething
Song.
Song. Do
Kuroda
it.
did play a land, my apologies.
Do it. Do it.
Oh, no Seething Song.
I'm so disappointed.
At some point, that's got to happen, right? All right, Kuroda plays his 4th land and a Solemn Simulacrum.
Yens. Every deck in the final will have 4 copies of Yens.
Yeah. Yeah. No decks remaining in the tournament have Ornithopters or just Garaya parts.
It's true. Sad to say. Yens has outlasted the O2 flyer for 0. That's really really top-notch commentary for the quality of Yens' card. It is better than an O2 for 0.
Peset's mulligan seems to have worked out just fine, by the way. Straight to 4, straight to turn 4 Solemn Simulacrum. So
the importance of Simulacrum in the Red Mirror is enormous. I mean,
just building up mana. Or?
Oh, I mean, he both builds up your mana, which is extremely important, as well as providing a body that gives you a damage source that if your opponent doesn't
they have to
remove
burn it. They can't just keep getting hit.
I mean,
right?
they can't just let you keep hitting them. I mean, and like if you get an early Simulacrum, you just get such a mana advantage. If you play like turn 2
Mori looking on.
turn 2 Talisman, turn 3 Simulacrum, you're just way ahead, especially playing first.
The crowd is definitely behind Masashiro Kuroda. No Japanese players ever won a Pro Tour. They've gotten used to the top 8s. They really want the title.
Me too. I haven't really gotten used to the top 8s, though, sadly. Only a couple.
Arc-slogger from Kuroda.
The big boy.
And it was 6 mana, so he's able to kill Solemn Simulacrum. Removes 10 cards from the game. Looked like he lost one Arc-slogger in the mess. Lost a Fireball. Not too much damage, though.
Well, I mean, this card might as well have been in the bottom of his deck.
Oh, I know.
So,
well, still, I mean, if you learn that all the rest of your Arc-sloggers are on the
true.
bottom of the deck, that's bad news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still rather have stuff in the deck.
It just reminds me of when people used to say Jester's Cap and Millstone were card advantage because they get rid of threats of your opponent. It's like no. Fundamental misunderstanding of the concepts of Magic.
20, Puzi 18. Go.
So Arc-slogger came down, blasted Peset's Solemn Simulacrum out of the way, and Kuroda's Simulacrum was able to plink away for 2, drawing first blood. Flame Break. That gets rid of the Simulacrum, and presumably he has a way to finish off the Arc-slogger. Kuroda He killed the ends without using up a card.
Yeah.
He also, his arc-slogger, I guess that was break
That was
even.
a 2 for 2.
Yeah, it was 2 for 2. He's up a card from the arc-slogger plus a card from the mulligan. According to our spotter on the floor, Peset has 1 flame break in his sideboard.
So that was the one he has, or he has 2 in his deck. Then.
So, took out 1 flame break, but left in a couple. Also, all the shrapnel blasts are still in his deck. None in the sideboard. Speaking of arc-sloggers, it's Peset's turn.
Evening things up with this arc-slogger taking down the simulacrum, I'm sure. Assuming Kuroda can even kill it. If he can't kill it, it's a bad thing. Kuroda weighing his options, figuring out just what he wants to do about that big red beast. Maybe that's Clifford the big red dog. Arc-slogger's more of a dog than a dragon. He can be Clifford. Have you ever actually seen that there's a cartoon, Clifford the big red dog?
I think I remember.
There's
there was
the
a book,
books.
right?
Yeah,
I
there
remember
were
the
the
books.
books, but there's actually a cartoon now where Clifford actually talks.
All right.
He's a giant red dog. I think Arc-slogger is going to be Clifford. I have dubbed him thus.
I thought Furnace Dragon was Clifford.
He's a dragon. He can't be a dog.
I agree.
Arc-slogger's a beast, so he can be a dog.
All right. I'll buy that.
Uh-oh.
Kuroda serving with the simulacrum. Probably hoping that Peset will block, and then he only has to deal 3 damage to take out Arc-slogger. Meanwhile, Peset has 1 mountain up, so he has his choice. He can kill a Blinkmoth Nexus, or he can kill a Solemn Simulacrum.
It seems like his play here is probably to shoot the Nexus and not block. I mean, of course, that changes based on the cards in his hand and everything, but the blocking the Simulacrum just seems like it can't be right because it gives Kuroda the ability to remove Arc-slogger with just a Barbed Lightning.
Meanwhile, we're being joined in the booth now by Gary Wise. How you doing, Gary?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. How you doing, guys?
Can't complain. Exciting day of red versus red
Yeah,
versus affinity
gonna
versus
say,
affinity versus.
Outside, someone said it seemed like a really tough mathematical battle, and I was like, yeah, who can subtract from 20 the fastest?
Well, there's as we were saying when Tom Gwevin was in here, there's a lot of strategic decisions that go into the use of Pulse of the Forge, for instance.
I'm sure a lot of things were said while Tom gave him.
There was a great deal of talking done while Tom was in the room. Although I don't know what position you're in for talking about how much people talk, Gary.
I'm not shrinking violent. I don't know what you're talking about. And look who's talking.
It's true. Hey.
Although I give you credit. When Tom was in here, I'm sure you were not the loudest of the 3.
I was being really loud.
I'm sure. I really want Kuroda to win this.
Why is that?
Kuroda's been an ambassador of the game in Japan for a long time and a very good guy, and who has been very patient with regards to serving as interpreter for a lot of ignorant North American Magic players, including myself. And,
Meanwhile, Peset has made up his mind with his Arc-slogger. He has pointed 2 damage at the Solemn Simulacrum, so he's willing to take a hit from Blinkmoth Nexus here. Wants to get Yens off the table, and does not want to block it, interestingly. Seems reasonable. We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, so the fact that Kuroda speaks such good English just made him a translator.
Well, yeah, the Japanese, more than just about any other group on the Pro Tour, are isolated by the fact that they speak less English than anybody.
Well,
That's interesting.
Did he shrapnel blast the face?
Yes. Masashiro Kuroda, after the Arc-slogger got pointed at the Solemn Simulacrum, sacrificed it to a shrapnel blast and pointed it at Peset's face.
That'd be a good thing.
Barbed lightning to you and
Yeah.
another shrapnel
Wow.
blast.
Kuroda will
Holy wow!
That wasn't what he was expecting.
The assassin.
Jeez, Masashiro Kuroda.
That was out
Little
of
smile
nowhere.
even.
We are going to game 5, ladies and gentlemen. 2 games apiece. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with game number 5.
toilet.
Hello and welcome to game 5. Masashiro Kuroda brought ridiculous amounts of burn out of the sky down on Alexandre Peset, forcing this game 5. It's 2 games apiece. The winner gets to play in the Pro Tour Kobe championship match.
No beef, but quite a bit of money.
$30,000 to the winner, 30 grand. The loser will have to settle for $20,000.
Of the finals, not of this match.
The loser of this match gets $13,000 or $15,000, depending on their tiebreakers. All in a weekend's work, playing Magic.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I remember when I first got one of those big checks, I was just like, this is amazing.
It's good times. Talisman from Peset, but it gets blown up. He uses the mana to cycle a spellbound. Uh-oh.
Peset does not look happy now.
Peset does not look happy. He lost his talisman. He cycled, clearly digging for land. And he has to say go, no third land. Oh, no seething song. I wonder if he had the seething song. How much would it suck if... Oh, Molten Rain!
Wow.
Bye-bye, Stalking Stones.
18.
Masashiro Kuroda said, you guys counted me out. I was down 2-1. My opponents got the better sideboard, but this might be Japan's weekend.
This is where Kuroda's sideboard comes in. The Molten Rains.
Molten Rain was giant right there.
Yeah. It can really... the part of the game where, as we were saying earlier, was pretty important.
Yep.
The Solemn Simulacrum point of the game, that's what Molten Rain keeps your opponent off of. When you're going first, Molten Rain can be absolutely devastating. And
Still no land for
here we've
Peset.
seen.
Wow.
Yep.
Slogger.
Slogger? Oh, slams it into
Wow.
the table defiantly.
Wow.
And all Peset can do is point. Unbelievable. Masashiro Kuroda attacks with arc-slogger. Yeah, this game's over. This is just ugly at this point.
Right.
Oh my goodness. My spotter on the floor tells me Peset had Seething
Song,
Song and Arc-slogger in his hand.
hand.
That artifact destruction spell blowing up the talisman stopped a turn 3 slogger.
That's, wow.
Unbelievable. And, I was wondering, the spotter also said that Kuroda sideboarded out 2 Pulses of the Forge. Clearly, he knew what mattered in this matchup. It's Molten Rain, and he wanted enough artifact destruction to kill those talisman.
Yeah, he wanted going first. I think your game plan
Is land
is much
destruction.
different. You want land destruction, and you want
Amazing.
take advantage of your opponent's.
2 activations of Arc-slogger. That's going to drop Peset to 14.
Yep.
10.
No, to 10. 20 to 10 already.
Maybe he'll deck himself.
Insanity.
Fuji 8.
Now Peset's at 8. 20 to 4.
Fuji 4.
Untap. Attack with Arc-slogger.
And
This might be Japan's weekend.
There you have it.
Masashiro Kuroda, 3-2. Through to the finals. Alexandre Peset, still a happy man. Finally got on the Pro Tour, and now he'll be back for the next one. We'll take a break. We'll be back with the finals of Pro Tour Kobe. Should be a good one, so stay tuned.